Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today, it is the 15th of March. It's Friday, 2024. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome back. Hello to all my friends, my moderators, my members. Thank you to Doug Betts for that really cool trailer that we ran today before the show. And today, we're going to do something familiar but a little different. And that is going to be talking about how you can build your own computer based on your own budget, your own needs, your own values, without having to completely redesign everything from the ground up. Starting with today's components, you can change any of these components with a wide range of different compatible boards, RAM, storage, and CPUs. And it'll be a pretty safe bet that everything's going to work well together, even if it's not the exact parts I'm using, or you want to just change one or two of the parts I'm using and keep everything else the same. All of that's completely safe. And there's really no new motherboard chipsets or Intel CPUs, likely no new AMD CPUs until the fall. So, you know, when something new comes out and it's all the hype, it's all everybody's talking about, it's very expensive. And it's really hard to get something when it's brand new because the enthusiasts buy it all up and pay top dollar. And then the rest of us regular folks who have a regular amount of money and are, you know, perhaps a little bit of an enthusiast, but not at that level, can wait for the prices to come back down to MSRP or less. So, for example, the 14900KS was just released yesterday. It has an MSRP of $699.99. Complete ripoff, in my opinion. But regardless, if you want to buy it today, it's $729 at Newegg. That's a $30 over MSRP price tag. If you want to be first and you want to pay those prices, be my guest, go ahead of me. For the rest of us, there are values to be had. And depending on what your budget is and what you expect the machine to do, it's an 8-year build no matter how you do it, using a Socket 1700 Intel chip, whether that's an i3, i5, i7, or i9, the choice is yours. So, you know, whether you want to make a gaming PC, whether you want to make a business PC or just a generic home PC for everyday use, to be reliable, for the parts to be of a value, in stock, available, and something very easy to put together without any complexity, that's what I'm going to show you today. And so welcome in as we go through this build one last time as a best bang for the buck for 2024, but really for you to decide what that best bang is. Some of us have more money than others. Some of us are harder to please than others. Some of us are more demanding than others. And there's no right or wrong answer here, but I want you to have the freedom to know that you can safely swap different parts out and not have to worry about something not working together, as long as you follow the simple rules that I tell you throughout the video. Our thanks to our friends over at Acronis. Acronis is offering you guys 30% off any Acronis product throughout the year for the rest of 2024. And they're including a free copy of Acronis Cyber Connect for any purchase above just the regular home version. So if you go up one step above that, you get a free year of their remote software. Now, the remote software I use in my business is Instant House Call. In fact, I've been using it all this week on clients. Oh my gosh, I think I've connected to 30 computers over the last 3 days. Been going to bed really late. I'm working at night. These tax people are doing taxes and they're at the office till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and I can't get started until after they leave. And I mean, I'm doing everything. I'm able to update BIOSes remotely, at least on the Gigabyte boards I can, not on the ASRock boards. I'm able to do their Windows updates. I'm able to put on the latest VLC version, the latest Adobe Acrobat version, the latest version of Chrome, all the latest drivers, Intel video drivers, chipset drivers, network card drivers, cleaning up all the temp files, making sure that the updates are set to automatically install so they won't fall so far behind in the future, making sure there's an active Malwarebytes subscription and that is done a full, complete scan with the option to turn on scan for rootkits. And those scans can take 3 or 4 hours on some of these machines, so that's like one of the last things I do. Each machine takes about 2 hours, so I've got somewhere between 40 and 60 hours into it. But once it's done, just to maintain it from that point forward, if I log in monthly, should be really easy. An instant house call makes this whole process simple, secure, encrypted, and we don't have to worry about potential hacking events. So my shout out and thanks to them. And they have a free trial just like Acronis does. Over at acronis.com, try Acronis Cyber Protect Home. Over at instanthousecall.com, try the Instant House Call remote software. No credit cards required. It's all free. You decide the value for yourself. And if you want to buy it, both of these companies are offering a discount just for you guys, right? So if you don't watch this channel, you don't get that discount. Just so you know, and free trial. All right. Hello to everybody joining, and all my friends in blue. We see a lot of folks in white also joining us. Welcome in, welcome in. We are live, unscripted and unrehearsed. Everything we do is real, just like in my computer repair shop. I don't get to rehearse and I don't get to edit. When a customer brings in a machine, or I go get a machine or work on a machine in the field with a customer looking over my shoulder, this is just the same as what I've been doing since 1991. I've been doing this a long time. So all that nervousness went away a long time ago. And when we make mistakes, we're learning, and that's okay. We can learn together, and you can have the experience virtually. That's about as close as I can give you to a lesson that will more likely stick with you than just simply giving you answers, because then you're just testing your memory. Memory versus experience are two very different things when it comes to the retention level of that information and your ability to exercise that when needed. So this is about as close as I can get you to doing it yourself. And while you may not make the same mistakes that I will make, I guarantee after you see me make them, you'll know not to do that. So that way you'll make mistakes I didn't make. All right? That's okay. We don't make mistakes. We're not learning. They're nothing to shy away from or be afraid of. Either way, we work through it. We figure it out. It's no big deal. Hello to Chris Johnson and Joe Justice. There's John Williams and Dan Nelson. Marlena's in the chat, of course, Richard Palmentier. Welcome in as well to Jeff Ryman and Doman 2000. Anna Linda says hello. James C. says hello. There's Tim out of this world. Dom Long. Thomas Backenstow. LJ and Ben Laird. Ben joins us from Scotland. And let's see. We've got some thunder and lightning outside, but the suppression system on the microphone might be saving you from having to hear that. Steve Mercure, Frank Jimmy, and Essential Working Too Hard say hello, as does Scott. Mark Gaines from Northern Ireland with a 10-pound super chat says hello. 3D Everything, Paul Connolly and Dave Batt jumping in the chat, as well as Kurt Schlegel, Tom Saul, Robert McCord Magumi, Captain Blinsky, and David Graham all saying hello. There's Richard Palmentier renewing membership. Thank you, Richard. Garfield Rupe and Stowe, S-T-O, says hello, as does Thomas MacT, Ron Barnish, George Ferrugia, and Garfield Rupe. Elhej Depez, Darren Gilholm, David Herzog, Safari 360, Leslie Cavins, Eddie Casanova, and Dwayne Blackwelder, and of course our friend Lou Greenia, all say hello in the chat. Welcome, welcome in. Now, and a €1 contribution from our friend Peter. Thank you, Peter. And a shout out to our friend Buster, Peter Laycock out in Scotland, who will be watching the video later, sent in a nice PayPal contribution to help support the channel so we can remain independent and buy everything you see so that we're not beholden to any corporation to be allowed what we're allowed to say or to be told what is forbidden. We do whatever. I would run my business the same way. And this is just an extension of my real life 30+ year business in the industry of fixing, repairing, upgrading, and building computers. Fixing, repairing, building, and networking. All right. Get all that? Just in case you're new here. So I want to talk to you about the state of motherboards and processors right now. All the new stuff has come out, except for the 14900 KS, which again, complete waste of money. If you just want to keep throwing power at something and you want to have difficulty cooling it just to get another 200 megahertz so you can spend, $200 more, it's no value. But, some people just got to be first. Some people got to be fastest. And I've never met one of those people who actually had any use for it. They just want to flex and show off because they can. I don't find anything appealing about that behavior. I think it's kind of disgusting, and it turns me off for people to boast and to brag. And I kind of like the attitude of, is it Finland, or is it where basically it is considered impolite to show off. And anyway, regardless of that, maybe I shouldn't be an American. Maybe I should be Finnish, or maybe it's Denmark. Maybe I should be Dutch. All I know is in some of these countries, Scandinavian countries in that area, it is culturally unacceptable to boast about your success. And it's a big thing people do here in America. And it just, after a while, you know, a lot of these people are just fronting. They're just putting everything on credit cards, making it appear that they have more, when in fact they might be financially in ruin, just so they can try and impress people they don't know, that if they met, they probably wouldn't even like. I hope you don't fall into that trap. But if you do, it's your money, you know, have at it. Will I be doing a 14900 KS build? Not likely. No, it's a complete ripoff. However, that's my opinion. Don't let me get in your way. Where there's value, that's where I'm always going to lead to, in most cases, with few exceptions. And so today, I wanted to give you an example of the kind of dilemma you might find yourself in determining value. Now, you see about 2 processors here. There's actually a third one, but I'm not going to spend $200 to put a third one up here. Instead, I'm just going to show it to you, because I think the point that I'm going to make isn't going to be made any better if I actually have it here. But let's take a look at these processors that are virtually all the same, with very minor differences other than price. And then let's take a vote from you guys in the chat over which one you would build with. Now, before I show you, I want you to know these aren't the only processors you can use. There are other socket 1700 Intel processors, 12th, 13th, and 14th gen, that will all work on any socket 1700 motherboard. However, the i3s I think are too weak and will get obsolete too soon. The i7s I think don't offer enough extra performance from the i5s for the money. The i9s are just enthusiasts. That's for people who have more money than brains, or they have a very specific legitimate need to get that little extra 10% of boost. I don't know, but for me, most customers that I see ordering i9s are just wasting their money just because they have it to waste. If I had it to waste, maybe I'd be doing it too. I have built i9s here, and I've learned some very valuable lessons from it. And I want to share those lessons with you so that you can determine if that's right for you or not. So for this build video, in order to keep the value proposition, we don't want to go high, we don't want to go low. We're going to stay in the i5 range, specifically the 12th generation 12500 i5, the 13th generation 13500 i5, and the 14th generation 14500 i5. They're all i5s. They all end in 500. They all come with coolers. They all are 65-watt processors. They're going to run quiet. You're not going to have any difficulty cooling them. You're not going to be overclocking them. They're going to be rock solid, very inexpensive. But which one is the best value? Let's take a look at the prices today, the 15th of February, 2024, here on Amazon. I think you might be surprised. You would think the 12th generation would be the cheapest. The 13th generation would be the middle price, and the latest 14th generation would be the most expensive. I think we would all agree that's what's to be expected, right? Let's take a look. So if I jump over here to our first Amazon page, and I turn on my window capture so you guys can see it. Here we go. Here's an Intel i5 12500. This runs at 3 gigahertz, okay? This is in a retail package with a cooler for $194.99 US. If we look at the specifications of this chip, you're going to find 18 megs of L3 cache, where we can see how many cores and threads, and then we can compare them. All right, but just to get out of the gate, just for pricing, $194.99 is the cheapest i5, well, the cheapest 12500 i5 we can put in this motherboard. That comes with a cooler. If you want to go to the 13th gen, you're going to spend another $45. Again, the 6 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores, 24 meg of cache, up to 4.8 gig. But hold on, don't worry. The other one said 3. It didn't say what it was up to. That was its base. These chips aren't very different. Let's go to the 14500. The most expensive chip that you would assume is $6 less than the previous generation, on sale right now at Amazon, 14% off its MSRP, which it was not during the first couple weeks it came out, maybe the first month, as all the enthusiasts were buying up whatever's new. And there's an additional $5 off coupon, bringing this $10 cheaper than the previous generation, which has 6 cores and 6 performance cores, 8 efficiency cores, up to 5 gigahertz versus up to 4.8. So it's just a 200 megahertz difference on the turbo peak side of things. And if we go back and look at what our peak performance is here, I don't know why they're not showing it, but we could, each one of these chips is directly related in the manufacturing process with minor improvements, very minor improvements separating them out. So I don't know. See, we've got the i9s. Here's an 11th gen. The minute you add that K on the end of the processor, you're going to buy your own cooler and you're going to be fighting with your motherboard to get that machine cool. And you're probably going to have to go into the BIOS. There's no cooler you will be able to buy in most cases that will cool these K chips based on the motherboard manufacturers auto overclocking your chip, whether you like it or not. Almost universally now, all motherboard manufacturers are overclocking K chips on Intel and on AMD, and you have to be technically minded to know where to go into the BIOS to shut that, to turn on, to enable Intel's power limits. Intel power limits on the high end are about 253 watts, but when you build a brand new system with a 253 watt K processor, out of the box, BIOS default settings will run that to 350 watts. Is it going to kill your processor early? Probably. But the end results are that motherboard, when reviewers review it, looks like it performs better. So then all the other motherboard makers do it. That should not be a default setting. We're going to talk about that next week as I show you. You can put all the coolers you want, throw the coolers. I already demonstrated this on AMD. I'm going to demonstrate this on Intel. Doesn't matter about your CPU contact plate. It doesn't matter how big your radiator is. No, none of that's going to matter. What matters is your BIOS settings, and that's how you fix your cooling problems. Now, there's already some videos out there that talk about this. I'm going to try and take it from, my way of doing things and simplify this whole process. If you get a processor from Intel that doesn't have a K on it, it cannot be overclocked by the motherboard automatically, and therefore you would never have heat problems with it using the cooler that comes with it. All right, just so you know. Just so you know. So those enthusiast level chips are for technical people who like to go into the BIOS and make changes like that. It's not ideal for a system seller like me to customize a BIOS, give it to a customer, and then have that customer reset the BIOS somehow, some way, knowingly or unknowingly, and have the machine fall back to defaults, and I get a support call, the machine's running hot. Then I have to remember, how did I set that motherboard up? Because each motherboard manufacturer does it differently. I'll have to take careful notes, and I'll be expected to go on site since I can't do it remotely, and I'll be expected to do it for free. My cost of gas, my cost of time in the car, going there, making the change and coming back, it's not paid. It's included in the price, and computers sell for so cheap now. I'm basically paying people to take computers at this point. I won't do that. If you want to do that at home and you think that's fun, don't let me get in your way. Been beating my head against some cooling issues on a 14900K. That's been a complete and utter waste of time and money because it's all set in the motherboard BIOS the whole time. Everything I did the first time was fine. Same is true with the latest couple of AMD builds where I was struggling with heat-related problems. Doesn't matter what thermal compound, doesn't matter what contact plate, it does not matter what cooler. It's in the motherboard BIOS you must make changes. If you do not buy an unlocked CPU, you will not have these problems if your cooler's working and installed correctly. So you want to keep your life simple, or do you want that extra 200 megahertz? I mean, it's going to set you back an extra few $100s to get that little tiny bit of boost. But for some people will do it. I don't understand it. My brain just explodes thinking that that's something popular that people do, especially online, where it's mostly enthusiasts creating online content, not average, ordinary home users who I am hoping to appeal to. Now, when we look at these three CPUs, let's get back to them here real quick. If I do a quick Google search, let's just say we look at the specs of a 12500 versus a 13500 versus a 14500. We've seen that the 14500 currently is $10 less. The newest one is cheaper than the previous one because it's on sale. That's pretty crazy, but this is what sales can do. Sometimes people don't understand why I buy certain parts because it never occurs to them those parts might have been on sale and cheaper than the previous generation or older part. It blows my mind that nobody ever thinks of that. Never, ever has one person reached out to me and said, I bet you did that because it was on sale. No, they always go, you're a hypocrite because you bought the more expensive thing. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I bought the cheaper thing, which you're assuming was the more expensive thing. I love the internet. I love how people just take information and run with it as though it were fact. Now, if we just go over here to CPU Monkey's website, we can take a quick look at the 12500 versus the 14500. All right, and let's face it, we should just take the 13500 out of the equation. Why would you spend more to get less? So which one are we actually getting more value from? The 12500 or spending $40 more, $35 more to get the 14500? And if we scroll down and we look at the specifications, we do have, let's see, this says 12th generation, 14th generation, the Alder Lake S chipset versus the Raptor Lake S chipset. For some reason, they're throwing in an 11500 as the predecessor, 13500 as the successor. Okay, cores and frequency. We've got on the 12500, 6 cores and 12 threads. And on the 14500, it looks like 14 cores with 20 threads. That's, I guess, because they introduced the E cores, right? Performance. These are all normal cores, and this is both big and little cores. You'll get some performance cores, but mostly efficiency cores. Of course, they both have hyperthreading. Neither one of them is overclockable. You'll also notice that the cheaper chip starts at 3 and cranks up to 4.6 versus this chip starts at 2.6, which is lower, but cranks up to 5. So you're kind of taking from one side and adding it to the other side. Is one better than the other? That's up to you. Now, when it comes to those efficiency cores, they're even slower. And of course, the 12500 has no efficiency cores. As to the internal graphics, they're exactly the same, except the UHD Graphics 770 that's built into the chip is a little tiny bit, 1/5 of, what would that be? 1.45 versus 1.55. Is that about a 3% increase? Something like that. They're both 11th gen GPUs, both on a 10 nanometer process. Both have the same max displays. Both have the same computational units and shaders, and everything's identical going down the line. Codec support, I believe, is going to be exactly the same going down the line. These chips are basically brothers. Memory and PCI lanes. The max memory on a 12500 is 128 gig versus the 14500, which uses DDR5. You can go to 192 gig. So DDR4 versus DDR5. DDR5 RAM costs more, but you can buy DDR4 motherboards that will accept the 14500. That's not a requirement. Depends on the board you buy. Both are dual channel. And of course, the maximum bandwidth will be higher on a DDR5 board, which is going to cost more for DDR5 RAM. Does it cost 13 gigabits per second worth more? I think that should be pennies and dimes, not $20 and $30 differences, but that's my opinion. Little difference in the level 2 and level 3 cache here. We'll get slightly more on the 14500, and that can give you the appearance of running faster. Both support PCIe version 5. Both have 20 PCIe lanes, and they both have the same PCIe bandwidth. Thermal management, they're both 65 watts, yet somehow Intel has figured out how to make these newer chips run cooler. So with all things being equal, they can run a little bit hotter because they run cooler. If that makes any sense at all, there's more headroom on them. And of course, they max out in 100 degrees Celsius when the thermal junction sets in. So we can go through all the technical details. They're basically built on the same foundations and pretty much identical. Now, we look at the performance numbers, depending on how you're using it with single core performance. The 12500 is going to do much better on single core performance. Well, I'd say they're very similar in single core performance. It doesn't do better, but it's close. On multi-core performance, of course, you've got a lot more cores here on the 14500. And if you're doing multi-core type work, you can see there's a significant increase in performance there on average using synthetic benchmarks that do not replicate anything close to real life use. But just as a form of measurement, we can see it's about a 4% difference in single core performance. 4% between the two chips. Is that 4% worth $10 per extra percent for you? Because that means if you want 100%, you're going to spend an extra $1,000 to double your speed. I wouldn't. Now, when we look at the multi-core performance in Geekbench, you can see a bigger difference, 37% difference. Now, getting $1 per percent improvement, I'd say that's pretty good value. But that doesn't mean that's what you're using. That just shows you what the benchmark's using, right? So clearly the 14500 is the better chip, but is it $35 better? Is it $45 better? That's really up to you to decide. I'm not sure what's happening here. It looks like they didn't run the test. The multi-core benchmark, it shows no results on the 14500. I think somebody's not done all their homework here. That's not accurate. Something's not right here, and I don't know what it is. So, but that's the gist of it. We don't need to go into all the nerdy details because, again, I like to make my videos for the average, ordinary person that's not a technical person beyond what we consider in society to be normal common knowledge at this point. So, out of curiosity, just as a throwing it out to the audience, if you had your choice of the 12500, the 13500, or the 14500, knowing the 14500 will set you back about $35 to $40 more than the 12500, and the 13500 will cost you $10 more than the 14500, which would you pick and why? Let me know in the chat. I'm very curious what your reasoning and your logic is. David wants to go with the 14500. Tim wants to spend more and get less with a 13500. Not too many like Tim around. Why would you pick the 13500? Because you think it's funny to say that? Or are you sincerely giving me a real answer? Nick Caffrey says he got a 13700K, and the way I understood, the only difference between K and non-K was the onboard graphics. I did not understand there would be cooling issues. I look forward to next week. Nick, I've got a video that explains the difference between K and non-K processors. It's a quick tips video. It runs under 10 minutes. You get 3 things different with a K processor. 1, you get an unlocked processor. That means you can overclock it. 2, you do not get a cooler. K processors are intended for enthusiasts who are snobbish and elitists overall, who think stock coolers are trash, garbage, very, very elitist attitude. So Intel and AMD, when they build their enthusiast CPUs, in order to attract the snobbish elite, they know that whatever a cooler they put in there is not going to be good enough. It doesn't matter what they put in there. I want to emphasize. They could put the best cooler ever made in there, and the snobbish elite will say it's not good enough because it came with the CPU. It's just a part of the mentality that goes with that type of thinking. And I'm not saying all the enthusiasts do it. I'm referring to the snobbish elite enthusiasts, which tend to be the most vocal. Now, at least in my experience, there's a third difference as well. So it's an unlocked processor, right? It doesn't come with a cooler, and it generally runs about 10% faster stock out of the box if you don't do anything to it. The problem is the motherboard manufacturers, when they sense you've got a KCPU in there, they're automatically overclocking it without your consent or knowledge. Instead of allowing the average user to be able to plug it in and run it at Intel's recommended voltages and speeds, they have decided that they want to do better in reviews because people are basing their buying decisions on these reviews. So they're going to review better if they overclock them out of the box. And then the reviewers don't know. The reviewers are looking at it going, wow, look how well this performs on an ASUS board versus an MSI board. So then MSI does it, and then ASRock does it. So they're all doing it now. It should be the other way around. It should be at stock speeds, unless you have the technical know-how to go into the BIOS and turn the motherboard's overclocking, auto overclocking on. It needs to be the other way around. Now, you and I aren't going to change this. I'm not kidding myself. We're not going to make a difference here. They've been doing this for some time, and all I'm trying to do is make you aware of it. And if you don't want to bother with that nonsense, stay away from a K CPU from Intel. Period. You won't have this problem. It's not an insurmountable problem, but it is a problem where people who paid less, who got a cooler, don't have to deal with all that nonsense and adjustment. Okay, so just, choose your own path is what we're trying to say here. I'm not saying that's wrong for you. I want you to know the difference so you can make the right decision for you, and your decision is unique to you and it impacts nobody else, nor should you be advising anybody else to make a decision that you made, right? Give them all the information from both sides, show them common courtesy and respect to inform them so that they can make their own informed decision rather than you making a decision for them, unless they're paying you for that and you're going to be held accountable, liable, and responsible for warranting and supporting that machine. That's my strongest advice I can give you. There's no good deed that goes unpunished. And if you're doing that for free, you will regret it, because people will hold you accountable whether or not you say you've got accountability or not. Give them both sides of the information so that they can make the decision for them. And unless you know them really, really well, telling them your preference has nothing to do with them. Telling me what item you want to order at the menu at the restaurant has nothing to do with my personal taste or how much money I want to spend on a meal or how hungry I am. Okay. Just common courtesy. Common courtesy. So 13500, Alan says he would choose the 13500 for DDR4 versus DDR5. Well, once again, Alan, DDR4 and DDR5 are not an issue. That's based on the motherboard, not on the chip. Every chip I have shown you will take DDR4 or DDR5, period. Just so you know. What's in front of me is a Pro B760. Let me give you an example here. If we go back over to Amazon and we take a look at the motherboard, perhaps I haven't explained this well enough. You can choose any of these chips, and you can choose whether you want DDR4 or 5. So if we take a look here at the B760 Pro RSD4 board, compatible with Intel 12th, 13th, and 14th. It doesn't add 14th, but 14th gen as well. This is a DDR4 board. The DDR4 board is going to cost less than DDR5, as well as be 100% compatible with any Gen 12, 13, or 14 Intel chip, K or non-K. So you can also buy this motherboard in a DDR5 version that you could use the exact same CPUs 12, 13, 14. That's up to you. You'll spend more for the board and spend more for the RAM. But unless you're going to get something high-end like an i9, you likely won't see much difference between DDR4 and DDR5 as you use the computer with an i5 CPU. It really won't make any performance improvement. It'll just cost you more money. So unless your plan is to replace the CPU with an i7 or i9 so that you don't have to replace the whole board to take advantage of DDR5, if you're future-proofing it, bear in mind that by future-proofing it, you're spending more today. So if you waited until you actually needed it and then bought it, it would likely be cheaper. So either way, it's an individual decision for each one of you to make. But make no mistake, DDR4 or DDR5 can work with any of these chips, depending on which motherboard you buy. There is no motherboard that takes DDR4 and DDR5. It's one or the other, and it will be in the listing description of wherever you buy your motherboard. I hope I made that a little more clear. Okay, let's take a look in the chat. Slappy says, Carey, your videos sold me on the side of the Mugen 5 coolers. Just saying. Hey, you know, the Mugen 6 coolers are out now, and we'll be doing a review on those here coming up next week or two, I think. But thank you. I'm glad to hear they're good coolers. Mikeman says, I've never used an i5 processor. I've always been with i7. Yeah, well, the i5s now are faster than the i7s of yesterday. So just so you know, you're paying more for an i7 and you're not getting much difference. So if you look at, if we take a look once again, let's go back over to Amazon one more time. And let's take a look at the 14500, right? Let's change this to, let's see, right now it's $239.99. And it's got 14 cores, which is 6 performance cores and 8 E-cores. Remember that. Now let's remember the price and the number of cores up to 5 gigahertz. And let's search for the 14700. Again, not the K, just the 14700. Look at the price difference. Oh my gosh. You got 8 P cores instead of 6 and 12 E cores instead of 8, up to 5.4 instead of 5, and you're going to pay $150, $170 more for that little, okay, there's a $15 off coupon. So you're going to pay $150 more to get 2 extra cores. I mean, let's face it, the performance cores are the ones we really care about, and 400 megahertz more. So if you take your price per core and your price per gigahertz and divide it by the cost of the processor, which one do you think has the better value? You might need those cores. I don't know. So you might say it doesn't matter what it costs. I've got to have that. But the i7s of yesteryear are the i5s today. And the i9s are really the new leader in that enthusiast level, where i7 used to be the top of the line. i9 is now the top of the line. And as you keep getting little tiny bits of more cores and maybe more gigahertz, you're going to substantially pay more, and your price per core in gigahertz goes up substantially for each tiny little increment. And, you know, if you got that kind of money, have at it. But just so you know, a 13500, for example, or a 14500 versus a 14700, you likely could not tell the difference between those two. In most cases, if I didn't tell you and you didn't have any software to look at it or look at the Windows settings and you just ran your software, I highly doubt you'd see any difference if you're like most people. If you have any specialty applications, that's different. But I'm talking about just the generic public. They're going after a number. It's a feel-good number. It doesn't necessarily make any sense. It's emotional. And that's okay if you're an emotional buyer. That's okay. I'm purely a logical buyer because I like to stay in business. And I want my customers to be happy. I also want my machines to be affordable, and I want my customers to keep coming back. So I have a very different process by which I don't just look for something on sale and buy it impulsively. I understand exactly what I'm buying, what it's costing me per gigabyte, per core, per megahertz. And I do what I consider in my head very quick math over the overall value. And if it falls within a certain range, I'm on board. If it falls below or above that, it's too early or too late to buy it. So just so you know. Ben says he doesn't see any point overclocking a home PC. You may not see a point in it, but if you buy a K processor and put it in a motherboard, that motherboard will, by default, using BIOS defaults, overclock that chip without you necessarily knowing. You're just going to be struggling with cooling issues, and you're just not going to understand why. And you could spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on different cooling solutions and thermal compounds, hundreds of hours in labor, taking things apart, putting it back together, trying to figure out what's wrong. Is it seated right? Get a contact plate. And it's not going to make any difference at all because you didn't go in and turn that setting off in the BIOS. And it's not the same setting across motherboard manufacturers. It's called one thing on ASUS, it's called another thing on ASRock, it's called something else on MSI, it's called something else on Gigabyte. And then on the AMD side, it's called something else on Gigabyte, something else on ASRock, something else on ASUS, and something else on MSI. Good luck keeping up with all of it. That's why it's for enthusiasts. These are the people who enjoy that level of intricacy. For the rest of us who find that maddening and insane, stay away from it, or at least know what you're getting yourself into before you spend your hard-earned money and you pay more for that. You pay substantially more for that inconvenience. All the way around, more for the board, more for the RAM, more for the chip, more for the cooler. And in return, you get that much back and a headache. But some people enjoy headaches. I don't know how else to explain it. Peter says his i5 12400 is faster than his i7 9700K. Oh, for sure. Of course it is. Richard Palmentier said he built a Gigabyte H610M S2H DDR4 motherboard, which is a socket 1700. Any socket 1700 motherboard is going to be 12th, 13th, and 14th gen compatible with all Intel 12, 13, 14 gen chips, no matter i3, i5, i7, i9. Kikazoid Tech says, personally, overclocking to me tasks the processor more, and I just don't see it. Enthusiasts don't care because they'll never keep the machine more than 2 or 3 years. Enthusiasts always have to have the best all the time. They've got deeper pockets or different priorities than the rest of us. They could be thousands and thousands of dollars in credit card debt. We don't know their personal financial situation, but this is something they chase after. Where they get the money is really none of our business, and they don't plan on keeping a board that long. So if they overclock it and they're reducing the lifespan of the chip, they'll never own the chip anywhere close to long enough for that to ever be an issue for them. We are talking about enthusiasts. An enthusiast isn't somebody who bought the best 10 years ago and they haven't bought anything since. That's not what an enthusiast is. Here's Martin Hogg joining us from Scotland. Martin says, hey, Carey, I'm late again. Thanks, as always, for sharing your expertise. Do I have any update on the non-booting HP? I'm still waiting for the response from the so-called knowledgeable internet that always seems to have all the answers after I publish the answers. And I'm giving them time so that they can't say they didn't see the video. So we're going to let that sit for a decent enough amount of time that no one could legitimately say I didn't see it, right? So it's sitting here untouched, waiting. But I would prefer if your questions are on topic with today's video. I would appreciate that very much. And thank you for your contribution. And good to see you again, my friend. All right, let's see what else we have here. Bloviator Maximus says, reinstate the voltage limit. Yeah, well, exactly. That's a major problem is Intel on the high end wants to run that 253 watt maximum, but the motherboard manufacturers want to push it darn near another 100 watts on top of that, which is insane. Absolutely insane. And of course, that's going to create cooling issues, guaranteed. But if you don't have a K processor, it's not an option for the board. So you'll never have that problem. Even with a board that would do that, simply take a 14900K. You know what? We're going to do this. We're going to get a build with a 14900K in it. Leave everything on BIOS defaults and see how long it takes before it thermal junctions at 100 degrees Celsius. It'll be maybe 3 or 4 minutes tops. Then we're going to take the 14900K out, put a 14900 in, and put the same overkill liquid cooler that we bought for the 900K. Leave everything the same and run it again. And how much you want to bet that sucker never even hits 85. Just changing the chip to a non-K. You'll say, yeah, well, that chip runs cooler. Yeah, it runs cooler because it's slower, because it's not being overvolted, and it's costing less money to run because it's not drawing as much electricity from the wall, and it will likely have a longer life than overvolting it based on the motherboard defaults. If you never go in the BIOS, you don't understand that stuff, and you're counting on the defaults, you are cooking your chip, if you have a K Intel processor, you are cooking it. Just telling you. And you are getting more performance out of it in exchange. But it also means you're using more power. Your fans have to run faster and louder to keep it cool, at least if you're actually using the chip. A lot of people that have these K chips, they just browse online, go to Facebook and YouTube. The chip is always idling, right? But for people who actually use it, oh, you'll know. You'll know because the noise will drive you nuts. And when you get your electric bill, it isn't going to be pretty either. It's just costs more for the parts, it costs more in your time, and it costs more in the electricity bill. And if you're okay with that, have at it. I just think people don't know this, and I'm just simply trying to provide the information so you can make the decision that's right for you, not for me, for you. I want to give you both sides. A K processor needs a Z motherboard to overclock, but the K version actually costs 10% of the box without a Z motherboard. You know what? That's another great point. You will need a Z motherboard to overclock, which is why people buy them. Here we've got the B760. So likely if I put a K processor on a B760, it won't run as hot. However, we don't have to worry about that with a 65-watt processor. These are all 65-watt processors, and the included CPU cooler is going to be just fine, no matter if we use a Z motherboard or a B as in boy, Z as in Zed, zebra, won't make any difference. So when we start talking about these caveats, all we end up doing is confusing people with information that is, it's accurate, what you're saying is true, but at the same time, may start to get people's eyes to glaze over, right? So when I decided what parts to use for this video, there's a reason why I stuck with the B760 here, because I'm looking at a budget build. Nothing that starts with a Z on the motherboard is going to be a budget board, and nothing that ends with a K is going to be a budget processor in the way I see things. And then whether or not you want a board that supports DDR4 or DDR5, that's your choice to make, but they are available and they will run all of the Intel socket 1700 processors, 12, 13, 14 gen. They'll run them all. So it's only the enthusiasts who need that extra bit of power and extra capability because they want to basically cook their CPUs and they want to spend the most amount of money for the board, for the RAM, for the processor, for the cooler, and spend the most amount of time to go into the BIOS and set that up so that it runs hot, but not too hot. But it will run hotter than what I would allow any of my systems to run at. You know, my limit's 85C. They'll allow their chips to run right up to 99C if it means they get a little extra performance. Doesn't matter what it costs for the power. Doesn't matter how much heat and noise it's making. For that type of mindset, that's who most of these videos are made for. I want to reemphasize what I'm saying. That mindset is who, when you're watching YouTube videos about building computers, it's generally coming from that mindset. Very few people are down to earth and practical when it comes to building advice here on YouTube, because only the enthusiasts primarily make the content. So they're going to make it for other enthusiasts. They're not making it for the vast majority of computer owners. They're making it for the minority. I'm trying to do the opposite here. And I'm trying to say, hey, every man, every woman, not just technical people, not just the technical elite and the snobs. Let's take a look at the practicality and price differential of where there is value and why you may be being misled by these other channels who do not fully disclose they are enthusiasts making emotional decisions, not practical or logical decisions. And that's okay if you know you're watching that. But if you think you're watching something that's just for the every person on how to build a computer, most builds are not. There are some out there. I'm not saying there's none. I'm just saying it's the enthusiasts who primarily are active online with regards to Reddit, forums, YouTube. And what kind of content do you think an enthusiast who's so excited about it, who wants to tell the world about it, is going to talk about just the average, just the practical. I'm a weird bird in this world because very few people are enthusiasts of practicality. So I'm an enthusiast, but not by the definition that the internet has embraced, unfortunately. All right. So we doing what? The 13500? What do I have? A 13500, 14500. Those are the two we have to pick from. We don't have to change out our SSD. We don't have to change out our DDR4 RAM. We don't have to change out our motherboard, our power supply, our case, Windows 10 or Windows 11, whichever one you want. It's fully compatible. You can change your RAM out to something other than this, what I've got. You could go RGB, you could go with more, you could go with less. In this case, it just has to be DDR4. Any DDR4 will work. This is a Samsung 980 Pro NVMe drive with a heatsink because this board has an M.2 that has no heatsink, and this slots in there and looks great. That's why I picked it. You could go with any NVMe you want to. Literally any NVMe drive that is, you know, the consumer-based drives that they sell on Amazon and Newegg, and plug it into this board and use the heatsink the board comes with if you want to. Any size, any price, any speed, you can plug it in this board. Of course, the board may limit the speed if you buy like a Gen 5. Kind of depends. However, when you use the Gen 5 NVMe on boards that support it, you drop your graphics card slot to buy 8. You need Threadripper or some other massive chip with a lot more channels and lanes to be able to accommodate that much throughput all at the same time. And that's a limitation of the chip for consumers. So you trade one for the other. In a couple of years, maybe that won't be the case as we continue to expand and evolve. So you sacrifice one thing for the other. It's constant sacrifice. I'm always looking for, where's the value? Where am I not paying too much and getting ripped off for very little benefit? Where am I paying too little and feeling like what I just built is already obsolete? Where's the middle? That's what we're aiming for here today. Nick Caffrey says, my K goes to 100C after 1.5 minutes. I'm going to adjust the BIOS after Carey's video. Yeah, you just want to look for the Intel power limits and turn those on and make sure that your fan curve in your BIOS is set to performance mode, and you should be fine. You might need to look up the, depending on who makes your motherboard, Nick, what the setting is called, because they all call it something differently, and it's located in a different spot. Chico says, I just bought the board and the 14500. Right on. Nick Caffrey said, I'm kind of proud I built my own PC, but I'm also kind of bummed I was so ignorant when I did it. I did learn a lot, though. Well, that's what it's all about. It's not about... Sometimes the best way to learn is through experience. And it can be a lot cheaper to have the experience than to go to a traditional school for a semester. That could cost a lot of money. So that's probably a great value, and it didn't hurt anything. And you'll know this is how we evolve and grow. Moving forward, you will change your decision-making accordingly or adjust it. Rob Dvorak said, selecting the 12500, which comes with a cooler. They all come with a cooler. And using a motherboard with DDR4 is the most practical. Well, for you it is. It may not be for me. Depends on how important those cores are for you. David Graham says the value's in the 14500 right now. I tend to agree with that sale going on, but the sale's temporary. Richard Balmentier says, I agree, the value in price was important to me. That's most people. John Williams would select the 14500. Thank you for your expertise in live stream. Thank you, John. I appreciate your feedback. Now, I tend to agree with you. I think the 13500 right now is no deal because of the sale. When the sale's not on anymore, maybe. I don't know. Depends what the price difference is. If it's $10, I mean, I'm not too worried about $10. Let's get this open. As you can see, they're going to look exactly the same to the naked eye. A 12500 looks like a 13500. It looks like a 14500. They come in identical boxes. Only the printing on the boxes and the printing on the chip is available to the naked eye to tell the difference. So if you didn't know to look for that, if you were just a consumer on looking at a bunch of these on the shelf and you go, that box says i5, I'll grab it, and you think you're buying a 12th or a 13th and you're coming home with a 14th because you weren't paying attention to the details. That's the world of computers. Details is always where it's at when we talk about this stuff. So these are all brand new parts, and I have done no rehearsal. This board has never been taken out of the box. This RAM has never been used. This 980 Samsung 980 Pro Gen 4 drive has never been. Yeah, the tape is still sealed. Everything. Tape is sealed and everything. So looking in our box, we've got our documentation and our Go Faster sticker. They're all going to look the same. If I'm unboxing a 12500, a 12700, a 13500, 13700, 13900, 14900, 14500. If it doesn't have a K after it, they all unbox the same. And they always have thermal compound pre-applied. You do not have to add any thermal compound, nor should you. And the cooler that it includes should be more than adequate for the processor. The processor sits here on the side of the box on Intel chips. If it's an i3, i5, i7, makes no difference. And you can just usually just slide that up just like that. And we've got our processor right there. And just keep this CPU fan covered so we don't get any dirt, dust, or fingerprints on that thermal compound. That can affect thermal efficacy of the compound. Maybe not by much, but why do it? You know what I mean? It's not going to help. So just put it off to the side until you need it. Keep it protected. With regards to our NVMe drive, let's go ahead and take that out of the box. Cut the tape. This is a 1 terabyte drive. Again, we're on a budget. There are other budget value drives out there like Feijing and MoveSpeed, Lexar, TeamGroup, AData. Really can't make a wrong decision other than if you need support. Some companies have better support than others. They almost all will have the same warranty. This is a 5-year warranty on this drive. Set that aside. RAM. Let's open up the RAM. We've got the cardboard that tells us the name of the RAM, a super teeny tiny little instruction manual with an almost as big Go Faster sticker. And that'll all go in the empty motherboard box to the consumer who gets this computer. When we're done here, this computer is going to blow your socks off with how fast and how quiet and how easy it was to build and how little it cost. This is easily an 8-year build. Easy. 8 years minimum. And it's going to be reliable, trouble-free compared to just about anything else you've ever owned in your life, and probably faster than anything else you've ever owned in your life if you're a general computer user for less than the cost of buying something off the shelf at Best Buy that's going to suck. And you get the pride of doing it yourself. Now, as you see, I went with non-RGB RAM because RGB costs more and it adds nothing to performance, security, or reliability. It's just putting pretty lights on it. You can go to Home Depot, you can go to the dollar store, you can buy some pretty lights and hang it around the side. I'm just saying, you could buy some stick-on lights and put them inside your case. It doesn't have to tie into the motherboard, unless you like to spend extra money. You might like to put hubcaps on your lawnmower. You know, I'm not judging you. Kind of am, but not really. All right, brand new motherboard. They had a MATX version of this on sale for $99 at Newegg. Amazon. Amazon have this? Do a quick search. Maybe it's still on sale. It's an ASRock V760M. What? What? $89. What? Thought it was a good deal at $99. I haven't even received it yet. I might need to cancel my order. $10. It's a big difference. I think it's the exact same board. Okay, now this is a micro ATX board. It's shorter. It doesn't have as many ports. It doesn't have as many memory sockets. Only 2 memory sockets versus 4. And pretty much you get a smaller PCIe by 4, 2 of those, and 1 PCIe 16 for a graphics card if you use a graphics card. And on the back of the board, you're going to have your built-in video, which is both VGA, HDMI, and DisplayPort, and USB Type-C. Oh my gosh, that's $89.99. You've got to be kidding me. Brand new, that's not a return, that's not refurbished. How is that so cheap? Wow. Yeah, you could buy a used one for $77. Not worth the $11 savings. Not worth the risk of bent pins and the hassle of having to return it, even if the return is free. It's still a hassle for $10. It says compatible with 12th gen, but it's actually compatible with 12th, 13th, and 14th gen. See, down here, supports, here it says it supports 12th. Here it says 12th and 13th. It doesn't mention 14, but 14 is included in there as well. Holy cow, $89.99 for a brand new motherboard. Now, granted, we're using a full ATX board. Just so you know, full ATX is going to be a little bit bigger. And really not that much more. At $129, you know, we're getting the 2 extra RAM sockets, we're getting more M.2 slots, and we're getting more PCIe slots, right? We have 3 full-size PCIes. So if that's worth the extra $40, going from $90 to $130, still a pretty good value. And then you've got a built-in I/O shield, which is also nice. No VGA port. Neither one has Wi-Fi, but you do have holes here if you wanted to hook a laptop-style Wi-Fi into the board and then run the wires and antennas to the I/O shield. You can do that. It's sloppy. You could also add USB Wi-Fi or a PCIe Wi-Fi card, which is, to me, way easier and oftentimes cheaper, but to each his own. So a little more expandability here, but almost at 50% more price, darn near. Very close, about 45% more cost. But I'd say you're getting about 45% more motherboard and ports and features. But you may not need all those. If you don't need them, why spend the money for it for something you're not going to use? $90. You got to be kidding me. Can we start all over again? Let me go on Amazon. Let me order that board. Let's wait till it comes in. Because we could do the same build with all the same parts. It would cost me $40 plus sales tax cheaper, about $45 cheaper. Technology moves quick, man. You got to keep up. All right, so bear in mind, those might be sale prices. In this anti-static bag, they've given us our motherboard manual. We've got some M.2 screws and standoffs. A couple more M.2 screws and standoffs. M.2 screw. SATA cables for anybody who still uses SATA drives. I haven't used a SATA drive in years, but, well, I'll take it back. In the NASs, I use SATA drives, but in desktop PCs. Motherboard. Piece of cardboard here. Just right over there. Piece of foam. Now here's how ASRock ships their boards. They are zip tied down onto this piece of foam. Nobody else does this, by the way. This is an ASRock thing. MSI doesn't do it. Asus doesn't do it. Gigabyte doesn't do it. So there are so many similarities between the manufacturers, and then so many little things they do to separate themselves from their competitors. Whether or not you see value in that, I guess that's up to you. But I've got to cut the zip ties on each corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a plastic piece here. Let's get these zip ties off of here so I can get the board out, and then I can take the plastic that's protecting the I/O shield from any scratches or rubbing that may occur in shipping. That could take off a bit of the paint or the words. but it's intended for you to take off. You, the consumer, are not meant to leave this on. Okay. Just put that down there. Get rid of that. There's our board. And I don't think we've got any more plastic on anything. I always check the metal. Anything that's got words on it or logos oftentimes has a piece of plastic on it that will yellow, it will wrinkle. It's going to make your board look like crap in a very short period of time. And also, whatever it's on is typically a heat sink, and that heat sink won't be effectively able to cool with that plastic on there. Sometimes they say, please remove, and it's very clear, please remove, and the customers never remove it. They bring the computer to me years later, and it stands out like a sore thumb because it's yellowed and wrinkled, and the motherboard looks like new except for where they left the plastic on it, which looks terrible. Which wouldn't be a big deal if they didn't have a big glass panel on the side of their case showing it off. All right, should we do close-up camera? Trying to get through this as quick as I can. We're already an hour in, and I feel like I'm not talking fast enough to get us through. Let's see. Nick Caffrey says, ASRock, love their foam, especially that little L-shaped one that Carey just threw away. That's a future antique, Carey. Hey, I'm a future antique. No, I'm a current antique. Still, nobody's buying me on Amazon, on eBay. All right, I want to scroll through the chat while Mara gets the close-up camera fired up. The link you have is $129.99. Okay, well, better deal then. $129.99 for one of these boards. Again, I'm showing you the prices at Amazon. So I'm not signed into my Amazon account. Sometimes there are deals for Prime members that only Prime members get. And if you're watching in another country, then of course US prices have no, they don't represent you at all, right? So I can only tell you what I know. Luke Greeny wants me to check email before we get started here. So let me check that real quick. And $25 from PayPal comes from our friend Luke Greeny out there in Vermont. And Alan Linda submits $17.77 as an Amazon gift card. So thank you so much, Alan, and to Luke Greeny. And of course, as I previously mentioned, our friend Peter Laycock with a PayPal contribution prior to the show starting. Right on. Thanks, guys. Again, I appreciate you helping to support the channel so we can remain fully independent and speak our minds without a corporation telling us what we're allowed or forbidden to say and being beholden to them in order to get paid. Let's go over to camera. What do we call this? Close-up camera? Come walk over here and let's see if that's working. Hey, it's working. All right. Wow. Gotta cover my forehead up a little more. All right, now you need to point it down here anyway. Don't look at me. Okay, so we have to put the RAM in, we put the CPU in, and we put our NVMe in. Now the NVMe drive has a heatsink on it already. And the reason I do that is because this NVMe socket right here has no heatsink. And you'll see it's a Hyper M.2 slot. So this is our Gen 4 Samsung 980 Pro. We slot that bad boy in right there. And then we have to go, if you back the camera up just a little bit, you're going to see in the bags that I placed. I'll get there. We've got geez, these words are all very different. We've got standoffs and screws. Each bag contains one. It's the dumbest waste of resources I've ever seen. Now, clearly, we don't need the standoff. We've already got one right here. All we need is a screw. Make your own jokes. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out. All that packaging for that. And then I need my little Japanese industrial standard driver right here. It's magnetized. This is just a magnet you can put on any driver to magnetize it. All of the screwdrivers and magnets and everything you see is sold on Amazon, and you can use any of my Amazon links, including going to my Amazon store to see pretty much everything you see on camera has all been purchased through Amazon. And if you make a purchase using one of my Amazon links, I make a small commission. You don't pay anymore. It has no difference to you, and it's a nice anonymous way to support the channel. Now you will notice we have M2 armor up here, so if we wanted to buy an M.2 drive without a heatsink, we would just put it under here instead. But I think that looks good. I think it matches the board quite well. And we're off to the races. So now we're going to open the CPU socket up. I'm not going to put one of those CPU frames on here because we'd be spending $10 for no good reason. And doing all the extra work. Now normally this opens towards me on other sockets, but on socket 1700 it reminds me of the hood of a Corvette or a Jaguar where it opens the opposite way. So I'll turn it this way so as you can see. And here's our 14500. Now I've never actually used a 14500 before, but I assure you it installs no differently than a 10500, 11500, 12500, 13500, 14500, except the 12, 13, and 14 are a different shape. So they have to be in this socket 1700. Okay, brand new, never been used. We'll open that up. There are indents so you can get your fingers here and grab it by the sides. Don't touch the bottom, don't touch the top. Find that little golden triangle, which was right there, and then find the golden triangle down here. And if you don't see it, it might be right on the lid. Do you see it? Let's see if she can find it. Now you can see it. So that triangle and that triangle are going to line up. And the way we do that, once again, we're going to lift this lid. Give this a little rotation so you can see a little better. All right. So the triangle was down here, right? Yeah. So it's right down on this side. So I want to make sure that that corner aligns with that corner. There's also little notches if you look carefully. 2 little notches right there and up there, and they're offset. So if I try to put it in this way, these little grooves in the chip won't sit down because the notches won't fit through the little cutouts. I don't know how well you can see those cutouts. Right there and right there. So you can't put it in wrong. It only goes in one way, but don't push down on it. You just want to line up those little notches and gently lower it as low as you can go and let it go. And if it doesn't seat in all the way, just kind of give it a little wiggle left and right, a little wiggle up and down. You see, I'm not touching the top. I'm only grabbing the edges. Do not push down on it. It's sitting just above 1700 delicate little pins. This piece right here, we can take this off. Keep this because if you ever have to send this motherboard in for warranty, you need to take everything off of it, including your CPU, your RAM, your storage. Anything you add, it has to come off. And you can't ship it with those pins exposed because they'll likely get damaged in shipping and your warranty will be void. So put this away somewhere and hope you never need it, because you're going to need to put it back the way you bought it, which means putting that back on the way it was. Now, you see this little piece right here? As we lower this lever, it's going to push down this whole frame and it's going to push that CPU straight down onto the board with pressure. And that's going to have a lot of resistance on it. It's pushing back at me. And we're going to hook it right underneath there like so. And our install is done for our CPU and our storage. All we have left to do is the cooler and the RAM. The cooler we can put on right now. It's super easy. If you look in the box, our thermal compound is already applied. I like that we have a nice black cooler with a copper core. Intel did not cheap out. except for the plastic. And no, the blue does not light up. Just put that over there. Now, when we can put this on any of these directions, but I like to put it on where the cable's going to take the shortest run, the most direct run to the CPU fan header, which is right here. It says CPU fan right on it. Of course, your motherboard manual will show you a diagram if that isn't as clear. And if you look at the CPU fan, you're going to have to pull up to look at the CPU fan. Oh, we lost the signal. Make sure this is plugged in. Okay, so here, the cable comes out of one side. So I want to make sure that that cable goes out towards this connector right here. So in order to get that run as direct as possible, that's how I decide my orientation. Now you want to make sure you get this lined up. These little plastic towers should just seat in the holes in the board. All 4 of them should seat. Once they've seated, pick one, push down on it till you hear it click, then do the opposite corner. You're going to have to use some force. Opposite corner and opposite corner. Then pick up the board by the heatsink, turn it over, and make sure that it's all coming through equally, that one is not shallower than the others, that it's all fully seated. Okay, but avoid touching anything silver on the back of this board and holding it like this. Wouldn't matter if you were wearing an anti-static wrist strap or not. There's nothing for you to short out as long as you're holding things by the edges like I demonstrate. Then you're going to take this cable and it's simply going to plug in to where it says CPU fan right there. Then we're going to take our RAM, and it tells us if you're only using 2 RAM modules right here in very fine writing, and it also will say this in the motherboard manual, that connected line says to use the socket closest to the edge of the board first, skip one and do the next one. So if you pull the camera back a little bit, we can just open all these up. Now this side doesn't open because it could potentially interfere with a video card here. So this side, some boards this side opens, some boards it doesn't. It's not that you got a bad one, it's because of the clearance between a long graphics card. So it says to use this socket first, skip one, and then use the next one if you're only using 2 sticks. So we align that with the notch, aligning to the notch in the socket. We slide it into the track very gently using no force. Should be, even though it says force on it, don't use any force. Once it's aligned properly, then with thumbs, you're going to push down until you hear a click, and then you're going to push down the other side until you hear a click. Then you're going to repeat that one more time, skipping a socket. Notice how there's a space. Click, click. We're ready for our first power on self-test. You ready to go? Mm-hmm. All right, so due to our power on self-test, I got to get a power supply up here and a power switch and a keyboard and a mouse and plug it into video. And we can update the BIOS while we're at it. So yeah, you want to take a break? We'll go back to camera 1. Went through that quick, didn't I? Mm-hmm. There's something new. All right, you're clear. Okay, I'm sweating over here. We're moving. 40 minutes left. Let's go. For this, I'm just going to use a 500 watt EVGA power supply. These are $60 on Amazon all day. A lot of people overspend on their power supply. They buy way too much power. They spend way too much for it, and they get like titanium 80+ ratings. It's just a complete waste of money for most people. The $60 power supply will power, you know, basic video cards. If you want to get something, you know, if you're planning to put a 30 or 40 series graphics card, maybe even a higher end 2080, you're probably going to want 750 watts to 850. Very few people ever need more than 850 watts unless you're running Threadripper or something excessive, which would be extraordinarily unusual. And in that case, it would be fine. But in most cases, completely waste of money and unjustifiable. It's just, you just have more money than the rest of us. And perhaps you're buying it because you can, not because you should. But either way, you decide for you. That's not my place to spend your money or to tell you how to spend your money. I'm assuming you're like most of us and don't have a lot of it. You don't want to spend more than you have to, don't want to spend more time than you have to, and don't want to have to be constantly tweaking with this to figure out how to make it run cool, reliably, or run at all, quite frankly. So we're just going to use this one, that's graphics card power. I need CPU power, which looks very similar. And we're going to plug that in with the clips facing the outside of the board. So, and finally, I need a keyboard and a mouse, as well as plug in HDMI, which I have over here, because we're going to use integrated graphics, which, if you're a content creator, are far superior than discrete graphics for video editing. You'd think it was the other way around, but Intel's integrated graphics are incredibly superior to even a high-end graphics card for most video editing purposes. Now, I need a power switch too, so let me grab a switch here from the drawer. That's the first one I grabbed, so I have several of them. Whichever one happens to be in my line of sight is the one that gets picked. And then we're just going to plug that on to the power switch header, which is always in the same spot on all motherboards, unless it's a mini ITX board. And then finally, keyboard and mouse. Keyboard and mouse I have over here. Everything was brand new. Brand new. You saw me cut the tape on the boxes. People go, well, how often do you get bad parts? About once every 2 years, I get a bad part out of about 300, 400, 500 parts I order. Unless I'm ordering returned parts, then the ratio is about 70, 80% are good. But I do take a chance with Amazon returns, knowing they have, if it's from Amazon warehouse, it has free returns. And if there's a heavy enough discount to make it worth the risk, I get about a 70, 80% success ratio. And then on the others, I just send back for free, and, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Keyboard and mouse are turned on. I got to put power to that power supply, and then we should be able to turn this bad boy on. Do you think it's going to work? How many people here think, is it going to work or not going to work? All brand new parts, never before tested. I've never built a 14500. I've certainly never put a 14500 on this board before. Am I going to have to do a BIOS update for this to work? I don't know. I've had this motherboard for months. I only got the CPU a couple days ago. Couldn't beat the price. What's it going to be? Speak now or forever hold your peace in the chat room, because I'm curious what your predictions are. We'll see who's a pessimist and who's an optimist. All right. So, anybody who watches this channel who's familiar with me knows this is going to work. If you're new here, you might be more skeptical. I can't blame you. So I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's put this video in the corner. Why is my video not moving? Camera one. Let's move camera one. Because I want you to see there's no editing. Everything is live. I guess we want to show all of that. And then the no signal part that you see over here, that's because this is turned off. When this turns on, it could take a good 90 seconds, even as much as 3 minutes, as it trains the memory and the processor to what we've put in there. It sets those settings automatically and then restarts with those settings. And in theory, we should get a power on self-test or post that shows the motherboard manufacturer's logo. But because our NVMe drive is brand new, it has no partition, no formatter, no operating system, it has nothing to boot to, it should just take us into the BIOS. If we sit here for like 4 minutes and nothing happens, it's likely a BIOS upgrade is needed to see this chip. And we can do that potentially one of two ways. I don't know if this board has BIOS flashback on it or not. I never even thought to look. Does not appear to have BIOS flashback. That means if this BIOS needs to be upgraded to see this chip, we have to put a 12th gen or 13th gen chip in it to update the BIOS first. Now, I happen to have those, you probably don't. So do keep in mind, if you're buying a brand new motherboard and a brand new chip, you shouldn't have this problem. But if you're buying an older motherboard, as I mentioned, this board's been sitting around here for a few months, but this chip just came out. So it may not be recognized by this BIOS. And so some boards have something called BIOS flashback, which I've demonstrated on previous videos, that you don't need a CPU or RAM. All you need is power, and you can update the BIOS on boards that offer that feature. I am not seeing that feature on this board. So we're just going to hope for the best and see what happens. Are you ready? 3, 2, wait. Is power supply? Power supply was not. Always keep the power supply off until we're ready to turn on for safety reasons. 3, 2, 1, blast off. I got a red light. There's 4 LEDs right here facing me. There's RGB lighting up underneath this board. This fan is turning, and we're going to give it a moment. As it wakes up from its slumber over at the factory in Taiwan, where the date and time are set, 12 hours difference, and it looks like it's awake, it's alive. That means it recognized our CPU, and we can update the BIOS if we want to. So since we've gotten this far, and that was pretty quick on a first boot, I didn't expect it to be that fast. We've certainly had experiences in the past where it was a little nerve-wracking. Now, if I turn off camera 1, you can see the entirety of the BIOS, okay? And it says on the BIOS that we're running version 4.01. Now, if we go to the ASRock website, which again, I can do this on a different computer, right? I have the benefit of that. You can do this after. I like to do it before I install Windows. But you'll see if we go to the motherboard manufacturer's website for this motherboard, the B760 Pro RSD4, first we want to see if we have 4.01. We do. Since then, 5 came out, 6 came out, and 7 is out. So we're going to grab the latest version 7, download that, and then I'm going to put that, in fact, I already have. In order to speed this video up, I'm going to put that on a flash drive. So if we go full screen on camera 1, I've got it on this flash drive, and I'm going to plug this flash drive into any USB port back here. Whatever one I grab is the one it's getting plugged into. The only time it matters is when you're doing BIOS flashback. Please watch one of the BIOS flashback videos if you're interested in that. This is a standard BIOS update. I have shown this hundreds of times. Anybody familiar with the channel already knows what's going to happen next. For those of you new here, please stay seated and enjoy the show. As we go back to, let's go back to the board here, and under right here it says Instant Flash. It tells you BitLocker's got to be off. Well, duh. But most people shouldn't be using BitLocker anyway, and we haven't even installed Windows, which you'd have to do before you could turn on BitLocker. This is another reason I like to do this before installing Windows. So BitLocker is off because there's no Windows. And the BIOS says, let me look for a BIOS update on your installed media. Well, the Samsung drive is not considered installed because there's no partition or format on it. It's just an empty drive. There's nothing on it. And the flash drive I plugged in only has one file on it. And it's the BIOS update file that I downloaded and extracted to this flash drive. So it automatically found it for us. We don't have to go looking. It looked for us. Hit the update button. It says, do you want to update the UEFI BIOS to 702? And I say, yes, I would like to. And it says, after pressing enter, the system will automatically reboot. Please wait for a few seconds, and the BIOS update will continue. Enter. Here we go. Now, it's going to be more than a few seconds. This process typically takes somewhere around 3 to 5 minutes. And in that time, you'll see the motherboard turn off, restart, and this is a hands-off moment. This is where you keep the system left alone and let it do what it needs to do. Do not mess with it. Don't play with your mouse. Don't play with your keyboard. Go play with something else, but leave the computer alone, even if it means you need to go outside, go check the mail, bring in the trash cans, take out the trash. If you're somebody who has impulse control issues or ADHD, get up and walk away. Go find something, use a bathroom, get a drink. Give it 3 to 5 minutes. You'll know when it's done. You will not have to guess. This is a very easy process. You do not want to interrupt it. If you can follow that one simple rule, you will be successful 100% of the time. Okay, see, I'm going to go get a cold Gatorade while I'm waiting. And see what the chat room is saying. Have I ever bricked a motherboard? Go back through my videos, watch every BIOS video I've ever done. You tell me. Dwayne Blackwelder says that new BIOS has the fix for the logo fail issue, which is good. Logo fail is the latest type of virus. You can learn more about it from Theo Joe. It seems unlikely anybody would ever really do that in reality, as it would be very specific to your particular board. However, with the BIOS fix for it, it certainly takes that possible. No matter how unlikely it is, it makes it 100% impossible. If you want to know how to update the BIOS for your board, look on my video. Search YouTube for the make and model of your board with the words update BIOS. And if I don't have the walkthrough of it, somebody else does. Everything you've ever wanted to know is on the internet if you could be bothered to look for it. It's really simple to use a search, and you'd be surprised at how much stuff you don't need to guess at anymore. Just FYI. Nick Caffrey says, I have the Z790 Steel Legend. It doesn't have instant flash. Well, instant flash doesn't really do anything instantly. This whole idea of instant flash is kind of silly. But either way, if you look at the Z790 Steel Legend, I believe I have the BIOS update process there. They're all basically the same. Don't let the words fool you. Nick Caffrey said some motherboards can do an automatic update. I've never had automatic updates work. Well, I would say never. I'd say 2 times out of 10, there was an internet flash option on ASRock boards that worked 20% of the time. I stopped trying it. I'm just done wasting my time with it. This is a much more controlled way and assured way to do it, and more universal and not specific to any motherboard manufacturer, whether it's ASRock, MSI, Gigabyte, or Asus. The BIOS update process is essentially the same amongst them. Just FYI. Now you see this is live and this does take a few minutes. This is real time. I want you to know, if you're going to do this, what to realistically expect. If I did this in a polished, updated 6-minute video, you'd walk away completely ignorant of the reality and just walking away with basically a 6-minute long commercial. YouTube is filled with 6-minute long commercials. Enjoy them. Enjoy the ads that air before them so you can watch the ad before you watch the ad. My videos are all real, live, non-scripted, one take, because as a working computer technician, this is how I work. I'm simply turning the camera on to show you how I work. Whether you see any benefit from that or you choose to watch entertaining commercials is entirely up to you. As you see, the system is rebooting itself. It has shut itself down. That's why it says no signal. It is now firing up with the new BIOS in place and doing any final bits of flashing the BIOS. Again, you want to leave it alone. And eventually, it's going to bring us up into the BIOS again. Until we're at that BIOS screen, don't touch it. And we're back. That means the BIOS update has completed. And you can see up here, we're at version 7.02 now. Now, this fantastic tuning down here, you can set your fan curve to be silent, standard, or performance, or full speed if you want. And you can leave all this at default. You can change it. It depends on if you are having noise issues or if you're having cooling issues. This is where you would go with this particular ASRock board. And that may vary depending on which ASRock board you have and how old it is. It sees our RAM here. We can turn XMP profile on if we want to. I would install Windows first. I would make sure everything's working for a good week or two. Then I would turn XMP on, and then if everything starts crashing, I'll know why. If you turn XMP on now on a new build and you're having issues, good luck diagnosing that. You just set yourself up for a nightmare because of your impatience and your inability to properly set up a system with a logical mindset instead of an emotional one. That's your choice to make. I wouldn't be making that choice, nor am I going to. XMP will not be turned on until this system has been cable managed in the box, fully working, fully tested, and then XMP goes on. And if there's any problems with the system after that, I know it's because of XMP. Super easy to diagnose it in seconds versus your nightmare because you couldn't wait. But you do you. All right, let's go back over to camera 1 real quick because I'm going to show you what I do next. So with camera 1 back, we're going to go ahead and pull the flash drive out. We're done with this. We can erase this. We don't need it anymore. I always keep flash drives empty so there's no confusion over which file to pick. Then I'm going to grab Windows 11. I have a video showing you how to make your own Windows 11 installation media. This is 23H2. Again, I can plug it into any USB port. I particularly want a blue one since this is an expensive, fast flash drive. This process will happen very, very quickly. So if I go back over to my HDMI input, we're back here in the BIOS, and just reboot it. F10, save and exit, I guess, enter. Now there's nothing for this machine to boot from. Nothing is bootable but the flash drive I plugged in, so I don't have to tell the BIOS what to boot from. It doesn't have a choice. It's only got one thing that's bootable. So you don't need to change the boot order. You don't need to tell the BIOS where to go. Because the drive is completely blank with no partition, the only thing it could possibly boot from is the flash drive. And that starts off our Windows 11 installer, which is downloaded directly from Microsoft. So we know it's not virus infected. We know it's 100% legit. And I hit next. I hit install now. And when this comes up, it'll ask us for like the end user license agreement, I think is going to come up. Oh, it wants a product key. Never put your product key in now. Don't do it. Don't do it. Click, I don't have a product key. What's your product key for? Is it for Windows 10 or 11 Pro? If so, select Windows 11 Pro and hit next. Then there's the end user license agreement and next. Then it's going to ask if we want a custom or an upgrade. It's always going to be custom. And then drive 0, it's our 1 terabyte drive, the Samsung 980 Pro. That's the only drive we have. That's why if I had multiple drives, I would only be plugging in the boot drive. All the other drives can wait. Stop letting your impatience make you take forever to get anything done. You can accidentally install to the wrong drive if you're impatient and you have multiple drives and you put them all in right now. Only plug in the drive you want your operating system on first. Get that out of the way. So we hit next. That's our only choice. We can't screw it up. There's no mistake you could possibly make. You just hit next. Once you've got Windows 11 installed and you shut the machine down, then plug in the drive you want to be the next drive letter and turn it back on. Verify that that drive letter is there. That'll be drive D if we hook up a drive next. Then shut it back down. Plug in your next drive and repeat this. Turn it back on. That should be drive E. Make sure it works. Turn it back off. If you plug in all 3 drives right now, who knows what drive letter you've got, what order, or where you're installing your OS, especially if 2 of the drives or 3 of the drives are the same make and model. I don't know how you're going to tell between them. Good luck to you. So a little bit of common sense goes a long way to getting it done right the first time in record time. Just a little tip from your Uncle Carey. If you want to work efficiently and you don't want to get frustrated and have to repeat the same processes over and over and over again, like I do when I talk. Let's see. Let's take a look at the chat. Look at this. We're all ready for our first reboot here for Windows 11. This is going to be still hands-off as we continue our boot process of installing Windows 11. Now the machine has 2 options. It can boot from either the flash drive and start our Windows 11 install all over again, or it can boot from the now bootable NVMe drive. And the BIOS, if you leave it alone, is already set to do that automatically. It's going to prefer the NVMe drive over the USB drive if it has a choice. If it doesn't have a choice, then it boots to whatever's bootable, regardless of what it is. If nothing is bootable, it just takes you into the BIOS. So we've seen all 3 examples in this video. Without me having to instruct the BIOS what to do, the BIOS automatically knew what to do based on our circumstance. If you take advantage of that, your build process is a lot easier. And look at how fast this install is moving. Did I mention what size RAM we put in? Was it 16 or 32? I was working so quickly. I think it's 32, right? Mara? It's 64? Oh, not such a budget build after all then. But that's all right. 64 gig of DDR4 is relatively inexpensive compared to 64 gig of DDR5. So what's a budget kind of depends on how much money you got and what you're comparing it to. But look at this thing moving. We're on to our final reboot right now. That completes our Windows 11 install. That's how fast that is. Isn't that insane? That's an i5. You think you're going to see a whole lot of difference in i7 and i9 in this process? It's going to take pretty much exactly the same amount of time. It just depends on the software that you run and how resource intensive it is that's going to make that difference. So here we go. United States, yes. US, yes. Second keyboard, no. Connect you to a network. I do not have internet. I said I don't have internet. Got to tell Microsoft twice. Username will be user, enter, no password. Turn off everything but location settings, so my date and time will be auto-corrected for me and kept current for daylight saving time, as well as just normal minutes being lost. Is really anything but an atomic clock, I think, is going to lose minutes regularly. And this will auto sync it so I don't have to worry about it. Takes care of it for me, and I can focus on actually using the computer instead of maintaining it or updating it. And some people, I think, only buy a computer to maintain it. They don't actually use it for anything. So I don't want to be one of those people. I can't afford to be. I have a business to run, and I want to make sure I sell my customers good quality equipment at a great price that's going to be super reliable, super fast, super quiet, and isn't going to require any service. And while I can't guarantee that, it really puts the odds in my favor, and my business is still around. And that's how you know that statistic works. There's not a whole lot of profit to be made in building computers, and a single return can just completely reverse any profit you make. Not to mention prevent you from working on the next thing, which would earn you a profit. So it's a double whammy where it's costing you money and at the same time you're not making money. That's why it only takes one support call to completely remove any profit. And if you add a profit margin in there to cover that expense, people will say you're too expensive and they'll shop somewhere else that's cheaper. And around the wheel goes. All right, so the Windows flash drive can go. And now I will plug in the network. Only now that Windows is installed, will I plug it into the network. And I do that so that Microsoft will not force a Microsoft account on me. It's not my computer. Why would I put my Microsoft account on it? It's going to a customer. So I want a local account because I'm a system builder. I don't want my local account on my customers' computers. Now, if we look in the device manager, if you notice down here on the bottom right, we still have the globe. Oh, there it goes. It says, do you want one step install the latest drivers? Hey, that's convenient. Let's do that. We'll say I've read the license agreement. Sure I have. Not only did I read it, I understood it. Sure I did. And ASRock's going to load all the drivers for us, which is pretty convenient. A lot of motherboard manufacturers do this with their latest BIOS. And it's going to check and see what we've got and recommend what we're missing. So if I had already installed Windows and did the drivers, this would probably say, yeah, you're not missing anything. But since this is our first install, there's likely a bunch of stuff in the device manager. If we look, right-click device manager, there's probably a bunch of stuff in here that needs drivers, all right? And that's what this is going to do. It's going to fill all that in. INF driver, VGA driver, audio driver, and management engine driver. Sounds good. I don't see Norton or other add-ons here. So I'll just hit the update button and click yes. And away it goes to do the work for us. I'm okay with it doing the work for me. And it's putting in the right drivers. No driver software is needed. Please do not use third-party driver software unless you like to have computer problems and waste your money, in which case, don't let me get in your way. You want to live in 1997? Don't let me stop you. Driver software is driver updater software that tries to charge you to update your drivers is so 1997. But, you know, if you want to live in 1997, it's not illegal. Don't let me get in your way. For the rest of you, don't waste your money. It's completely unnecessary today and will likely cause problems that you're paying for. Now, that doesn't mean that all driver software will cause problems, or that you're going to have a problem, but I can guarantee you won't if you don't use it. All right. Now, while we're doing that, let's take a look here at our date and time. It looks like it might have already set. Yeah, it's already set to the correct date and time. Do not go in the BIOS and change your date and time unless it's off by 10 years. If you're not off by 10 years, you're fine. Windows will autocorrect it. And when Windows autocorrects it, it corrects it in the BIOS at the same time. A lot of people don't know that. Now, this part of the process is a little painful because I have a slow internet connection here at Studio B, but that essentially is our build. At this point, once we do our Windows updates and finish our driver updates, which is all automatic, you don't need any special technical knowledge to just follow the steps on the screen, then I can put this into a case. Any case that will fit this board. This is an ATX board, any ATX case I want, any power supply I want, any RAM I want, that's DDR4, any CPU I wanted, that's generation 12, 13, or 14, that's a socket 1700. You can't go wrong. It's just that easy. If you want to throw a video card in it, you can do that too. You don't have to use onboard video. You can buy the F processor and save a couple of bucks, but then you won't have an onboard video, and that means without a graphics card, you will not be able to turn the system on. The graphics card is a lot more than the $30 cost of the built-in graphics card. I'd like to have it as a backup for diagnostics for the extra 30 bucks, but to each their own. Do we have any final questions? We're down to about 13 minutes left of today's live stream, and I'd be happy if I have confused you, if I have made something not clear. Please ask me and give me an opportunity to clarify. Mark Leibowitz says, please don't choose to live in 1997. I just visited a new client yesterday and had to take that junk off his computer. Those auto driver updaters slow the computer down and cause conflicts. Very common, but don't tell that to some people who will say, I never had a problem with mine. Don't you tell me not to live in the past. It's perfectly fine here in 1997. All right. Do I think an i9 is worth more than an i7 for rendering work? Depends on the rendering work. That is for you to decide, and only you can make that decision. Bruce Key says, why do you say not to enter the product key during installation? You don't want to enter the product key because you may have problems with your install. It may require that you send the motherboard back to the manufacturer for repair. And the motherboard manufacturer doesn't do repairs. The motherboard manufacturer is going to send you a new board. But now that you've used your product key and it tied to that board, at least the product keys that I sell with VIP CDK deals, they're just like Dell and HP product keys. They cannot be moved. They are married to the motherboard till death do them part. So make sure everything works. Why would you want to activate your product key before you know your system works? Isn't that an extraordinarily foolish thing to do? That's my question for you. Why would you want to put the cart before the horse? What advantage is there to you to do that? You can see we've not entered any product key and we are not hindered in any way from using Windows. So what's the hurry? What's the benefit of taking that risk? You tell me. Instead of me telling you why you shouldn't do it, you tell me why you should. How's that? Flip it on you the other way. And while you're at it, get off my lawn, says Frank J. David Graham says, I never got a cheap key. Well, if you buy a retail key for 10 times the cost, You can install it 10 times more. Okay, so if you need to install it 10 times over, definitely could save money by buying a retail key. But if you're probably only going to install it once like the rest of us and it stays tied to the motherboard, you can change your processor, your RAM, all that's fine. You won't have to buy another key. Even if you did have to buy another key, you're still at less than 20% of the cost of a retail key. So if you want to throw your money so Microsoft can buy another island, you know what? That's your choice. If you want to make a $1 trillion company a multi-trillion dollar company. But if you'd like yourself to do better financially, you can save money. You can buy a Windows 10 Pro key and use it to activate Windows 11 Pro. Both keys work equally to activate Windows 11 Pro. You do not need to install Windows 10 Pro first. And since a Windows 10 Pro key is cheaper at VIP CDK deals, once I'm done with all the updates and everything's working fine, I'm going to go to VIP CDK deals. I'm going to use the Carey 30% off coupon code, and it will cost me $16 to buy a Windows 10 Pro key. Then I will go into, when I'm done here, I'll type in activation, see if Windows is activated. It says it's not. Change my product key. I will enter the Windows 10 Pro product key that I spent less for than a Windows 11 Pro product key, and I'm going to type it in right here and hit next. It's going to activate and stay activated for life. You'll never have to do it again. Even if I wiped the drive and reinstall Windows and say I don't have a product key, without a Microsoft account, Microsoft will automatically recognize the serial number on this motherboard the first time I go to Windows Update and reassign the product key that I just put on it, assuming I had just put one on, and then reactivate it. And it'll do that without telling us. It'll just say active automatically without you lifting a finger. The only time that changes is if you try to use that product key on another board and it should work, then effectively it'll never work again on the first board. And theoretically, it should never reactivate on another board anyway, but some people try it and think they're getting away with something until they go back to the original board and find out it won't activate anymore, and you'll have to buy a new key. But thankfully, the keys are only $16. From Microsoft, they're $160. Actually, they're more than that for Windows 11 Pro. I think they're $199. So you could buy several keys from VIP CK deals before you'd even break even on your retail key. And it's fully 100% legal, 100% legitimate and legal. And if you don't believe me, contact Microsoft and they will tell you. There's a reason why VIP CDK deals has been in business for nearly 2 decades doing this. And Microsoft has offices in countries all over the world, including Hong Kong, where VIP CDK deals is located, and they are not in violation of any laws. Otherwise, Microsoft would have done something. Don't you think a company with the amount of money and power Microsoft has would not permit a company to do something illegal for 2 decades in a country where they have offices and attorneys? So again, if that's not good enough, contact Microsoft and ask them yourself, or just buy the retail key if that's your state of mind. It doesn't bother me any. I'm just trying to save you some money, but I'm not going to twist your arm and force you to, you know, if you need to eat and you refuse to eat, I'm not going to shove food down your throat. You can starve to death. I don't care. I've got other things to do. I'm not your babysitter. All right, so let's see. Check my email. Let's see. JRK Soldier says, I never use an auto driver installer, nor would I unless it comes directly from the manufacturer. So in this case, this is an auto driver installer from the motherboard manufacturer. You could not get better drivers than what you're being offered here right now. Anything you try to do something better than this right now is just harming yourself and doing it the hard way. This is taking care of everything for you so that you don't have to. You don't have to worry about getting the wrong drivers, as this comes from the people who made the motherboard, who know way more about it than you do. But, you know, you do you. If you don't want to do it that way, don't let me get in your way. You want to make your life more difficult? Go for it, dude. I'm fine with it. I'm just a computer technician showing you how I run a business. If you want to dismiss the profit-making ways that I stay in business for over 30 years as being somehow not reality, because your reality isn't that you're in the line of work that I am, then dismiss the information I'm offering you. Clearly, you have disrespect and no value to it. And I don't care. I don't require anybody's approval other than my customers to pay my bills and stay in business. If that's not evidence enough that I'm doing it right, well, good luck to you. Can't argue with people defending their ignorance. However, they have every right to. All right? We're all good, man. The pushback I get sometimes is unjustifiable. Nobody's forced to watch this show, so they don't have to watch it. If they don't like it, they can leave. It's the same show with or without them. All right? Hey, there's our friend Mitch Morrison joining us. Hey, welcome in, Mitch. Always good to see Mitch. So, Richard, I didn't have anything in my email, unfortunately. Oh, I do now? Oh, it must have just come in. Ah, an Amazon gift card. Oh, very generous Amazon gift card. Look at that. Wow. Well, thank you very much, Richard. I appreciate that so much. And hey, maybe we can buy a 14900 KS. No. I'm kidding. I would not take gift card money and just waste it. I will use that gift card money on Amazon so I can buy items like the Scythe Mugen 6, because Scythe isn't mailing me any. I'll buy them so I can review them for you. And $100 will damn near buy 2 of them. And they have 2. They have 2 different Mugen 6s. Actually, I've already bought them. But that's not my point. That's just an example of how I use the gift card money so I can continue to buy products I'm interested in that I think you might be interested in, and then determine whether or not I would recommend them and use them in my business. I'm not recommending it or not recommending it to you. I'm just telling you, would I recommend this to my customers? Would I sell this in my business? Would I put my name behind it? That's all I'm doing here. And then you take that information and value it or dismiss it. It makes no difference on the success or failure of my business or the happiness of my clients. Okay? But I'm going to treat you the same as my clients, which is I'm going to tell you what I recommend. You don't have to buy it. If you buy something else, then, if you're my client and you go provide your own router instead of buying the one I recommend, every time that router needs work, I bill you for it. If I sell you the router and there's a problem with it, it's my responsibility to return, replace, or repair it. And that's part of what comes in with my recommendation for my clients who pay me, is liability. Installation has been successfully completed. Very good. And I think it's going to reboot. It's also downloading Windows updates in the background without us doing anything, and probably wants to reboot here too. That's another reason why everything was taking so long, is not only was it doing the updates we were obviously knowingly doing, it was doing Windows updates in the background. The Windows updates are critical right now. I cannot stress enough, if you have not updated your computer, what a risk you're taking. It is an incredible risk to be running a machine without Windows updates with the latest virus that's out there. And the updates are what's going to keep you from becoming a victim. Strongly recommend. There's an article here from, what was it from? I'll tell you in a second. I think I posted it on my YouTube page. Sign in. Let me just check real quick on my posts. So when you go to my YouTube page, you'll see there's a section for videos and there's a section for community posts. And I will often put things that are on sale or news topics in those posts. They're not videos, they're posts. And if you're not paying attention to those, you're missing out on a lot of information I publish here. Let's see if I can find it. First of all, let's go to my channel. I'll just type CareyHolzman in YouTube search. And we're right at 3 o'clock, so we need to wrap things up here, folks. But just real quickly, if I click on my channel, there's a section that says community. And if you click on community, there's an article here from hothardware.com that's talking about the Darkgate exploit. If you don't know what the Darkgate exploit is, all you need to do is make sure you have the latest Windows updates and you don't have to worry about what it is. If you're the kind of person that thinks the Windows updates are something to be avoided, I hope you enjoy your Darkgate exploit that will eventually and likely get to you in time if it hasn't already. The article is available if you'd like to read more in the community notes, but also right here. It's brand new, fresh information. This is always happening. There's always new viruses, always new threats, how it works, and why these updates are so important. All right, guys, just trying to help you out. Again, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make it drink, and I'm not even going to try. I will show you the path. It's your choice to walk it. Richard Palmentier with a contribution of $10. He says, this is for all you've done to advise and help the community. Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate you getting what I'm doing. And of course, all my friends in blue, all my members in green, everybody, those folks, I'm not complaining about any of you guys, because clearly you get it. But when we do the public videos and we let the public in, they're so used to seeing commercials so often, they don't understand what they're watching. So it's like nobody knows what a classroom is anymore. It's the most bizarre thing. They want to watch commercials, and if you don't show them commercials, they get angry. This is a weird world, man. But thank you to all of my members in blue, all of my members in green, all those gold badges you see, because without them, this content would not have happened. ASRock did not provide these parts. Intel did not provide these parts. EVGA did not provide these parts. Nothing you're seeing here was sent to me for free. I purchased everything with the money from the community. And without the money from the community, I wouldn't have this, and therefore this content would not exist. So I hope that the viewers who are not a part of the community might consider becoming part of the community. You don't have to pay anything. Just be nice. Be a nice person. And in this day and age, that is a big ask on the internet. 1 in probably 10,000 people will qualify to be a part of this community, because it seems to me about 9,999 people on the internet are jerks. So if you're a jerk, don't apply. If you're not a jerk, I don't care anything else about you, your age, your gender, your religion, where you live, what country. I don't care, because there's jerks everywhere. Just don't be a jerk. And you are welcome with open arms. All you got to do is be nice. All right, guys. Speaking of being nice, thank you for all of the super chats and the contributions and the kind words that really need more attention than the people that are critical. And I appreciate you guys so much. And John Williams also mentions, don't buy an activation key until you're ready to use it. You know what? You probably shouldn't be buying bananas until you're ready to eat them. You probably shouldn't be buying a car until you're ready to drive it. The fact of the matter is, if you're going to hoard something and then use it months later and you have a problem, that's a very scammer-like behavior, and customer service is going to be very skeptical. If you buy something anywhere, anything, and you have a problem with it within 30 days, that's normal. In fact, some customer service is limiting it down to 15 days. So if you want less hassle, potential hassle, be sure that whatever it is you're buying, that you wait until you're within a reasonable period of time that you're going to use it. Don't go and buy a fresh pretzel and then bring it back to the store 3 weeks later to say it's hard and moldy. What are you thinking? Don't go to Best Buy and buy a big screen TV, leave it in the box, put it in your garage, go on vacation for 6 weeks, come back, take it out of the box, find the screen is cracked, take it back to Best Buy, say, hey, I just bought this and the screen is cracked. This is how it came out of the box. Best Buy says, no, you cracked it. I didn't crack it. It's been in a box for 45 days. Your receipt is a 30-day return policy. You read the back of the receipt. We're not taking that TV back. But I didn't know the screen was cracked. I just now took it out of the box. I don't care. It sure as hell looks to us that you cracked the screen and now you want to bring it back. You've had it for 45 days. You've had 30 days to return it. You chose not to. I don't care what your excuse is. The same rule applies to everybody who shops everywhere, with a few exceptions. Some return periods are a little longer. Some return periods are a little shorter. But overall, 30 days is normal. So if you have any issues with any product, whether it's something I endorse or it's something just in life, you better get off your butt and deal with it within 30 days, or you're going to be in for a fight to prove you're not a scammer. Not only are sellers worried about buyers being scammers, but the buyers are worried about the sellers being scammers, and nobody trusts anybody anymore. So this is how we deal with it. It's in time. The longer you put it off, the more suspicious it becomes. And the bigger a headache it is if you're just honestly that was the situation, then you should have avoided that situation because the seller had no knowledge of it and never agreed to those terms. That's something you created a contract in your own head that the seller did not agree with. And now you have false expectations that are unrealistic and unreasonable because that was not a term of the sale. You did not follow the terms of the sale. Everything in the United States is more or less 30 days. So, and then of course, common sense when you're buying fresh fruit, food, you're not going to get 30 days when it's fresh. All right, guys. Maybe if it's beef jerky, I don't know. Some exceptions. But those product keys, I make them available all year round so you don't have to hoard them. Everything that I promote, I endorse, is 100% guaranteed by me. There is no risk, zero risk. It works or they make it right. If they don't make it right, you tell me and it will be made right. I think in the entire history, there's been 3 people that had an issue and 2 of those people bought the wrong key and it looks suspicious as heck. It's hard to return a key and prove you didn't use it. I didn't mean to buy this key, I meant to buy that key, and now I want to refund it for the other key. In most cases, software, music, movies, you've already watched it, you've already listened to it. How do we know you didn't use it? But we still got them customer service and found a satisfactory resolve, even when the company lost money to do it. Please be careful. You know, don't buy a movie at Target and think you're going to take it back. Don't buy a music CD and think you're going to bring it back. In most cases, they're going to assume you've already copied it and they're not going to allow returns on it. That's just the way media is, universally. And again, there might be some exceptions, but that's why they do it. It's a very scamish behavior. All right, guys. So all the parts for today's video are all in the video notes below the video, in the video description. Thank you to Mara for putting all those notes together. If you decide to do a build like this, share with us what parts you picked and tell us why you picked them. This will give an example to other viewers as to how different everybody is and how nobody is wrong and everybody's right for themselves and themselves only. And hopefully that will inspire other people who still might be afraid that it can't possibly be this simple to start to believe when they start seeing all these people doing it and choosing all these different components, but using like the same board or maybe the micro ATX version of the board or different, an i3, an i5, an i7, an i9, different processors, a different RAM, different amounts of RAM, different manufacturers of RAM, all DDR4, plug it in, it works. Different storage devices, plug them in, they work. Maybe that will inspire those people who still remain doubtful that with all these other people saying they did it, maybe they really can do it too. And if you do run into any problems, we have an amazing community here that is very helpful. What we're not good at is predicting the future. Questions that begin with, what would happen if? We can't answer those. My answer could be, what if there were no hypothetical situations? It's an unanswerable question. But when you have an actual real problem, we can help you solve it 100% nearly every single time. But we cannot help you with your anxieties. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you to all my members. Thank you for everyone for joining me. A shout out again to our friends at Acronis, at Instant House Call, VIP CDK deals, and RoboForm, who I haven't even talked about this whole show. All right, so I'm not going to hammer you with a bunch of advertising, but these are all products I cannot speak highly enough about that all offer you guys a unique discount you can't get anywhere else. All year round. Actually, the Instant House Call discount, I think, ends this month, but we'll talk about extending it. All have free trials, all completely 100% money back guarantee. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. And I will see you all on Monday's members only video. Those of you who are members get a members only video every Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern. Then I generally do a public video on Tuesday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And then a big Friday show, something that's usually a lot more money, a little more involved. Those are usually reserved for Fridays. They are public, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern. I hope you'll join me then. I hope if you're not a part of this community, you will consider being a part of it. If you're a nice person, we'd love to have you. That'll wrap it up for me for today. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.